My name is Chris Boyle. I'm an architect in private practice and also a design studio tutor at University College Dublin, where I teach in first and final years in the School of Architecture. This is my presentation regarding the Diageo site in Kilkenny. I'm just going to start by reading a short passage from a book called Pulphead by John Jeremiah Sullivan. Centerbrook in southern Ohio embodies a type of small town college familiar to anyone who grew up or was educated in the Midwest. It started out in the 19th century as some sort of vocational academy, a normal school or a technical school, and accrued its university status over time, adding a department here or a professor there as qualified academics moved back from the Northeast to retire or take care of mom, until one day all that remained undone was to stamp it a liberal arts institution. No one ever got a good job just by saying they went to Centerbrook, but the students on the days I visited seemed sharp and ambitious. Many of them were a good decade past 18 to 22. And although the campus isn't pretty, it's all naked brick and parking lots, there was an atmosphere of seriousness about what they were up to there. So one of the reasons for reading that was simply that when I was first introduced to the site, there was talk that there was going to be a university as a possible solution for building on the site. And what I thought of was that first we should really consider the issue of time and how the solution to the site might change with time and how our own opinions to the site might change over time. And that really in a time when we have time to think about what to do with the site, we should take advantage of it. So I have answered that question differently all my life. It's simply a statement to say that there are different ways of looking at this, and I might even disagree with myself in future years, and I should consider that in the present. I'm talking about Blind Willie Johnson's "Dark was the night, cold was the ground," a song that has no words. It's hummed by a blind preacher incapable of playing an impure note on a guitar. We have again to go against our training and suspend anthropological thinking here because it doesn't serve at these strata. So we have to think differently. And one of my favourite stories that has come out of the recession is the story of Darragh McManus, a farmer in West Cork, who decided to change his business into that of producing buffalo mozzarella, which seemed like an alien thing almost to do in West Cork, and to go to the length of importing water buffalo, which he had never milked, to producing a gourmet food. And it's this kind of thinking that I think is apt when thinking about what to do and how to make a change. In Ireland, there's a kind of island effect where sometimes incredible intensities are produced. It could be seen as a backwater in Europe, but also it's the place that produced Yeats, Beckett and Joyce in one century. And I'm not sure how you consider the effect that that has. So in looking at this site, I've looked at other things. And one of the things is how you go about making anything. So just as a reference, I've looked at how you make a bridge. And this is a bridge in Africa called the Mausi Bridge, which is built by the community every year to cross a flood plain. And each year when the flood comes, the structure of the bridge is washed away. And each year the community then struggles without a bridge and also has to rebuild the bridge. So with the involvement of an architect, they looked at this bridge and thought of ways to improve it. So the structure that you can see is clearly washed away, and it changes into one made of gabions, which are rocks trapped in a cage which won't be washed away by the floodplains, and it's interconnected by steel-framed timber slats that form the bridge, that form little rafts that when the floodwaters come, they can be lifted, they can float down river, and they can be put back in place by 4 of the local community, so the bridge can be reformed as the floodwater dies down. You can notice in the form of the bridge how it staggers, and this is something that the designer took into consideration that the local community believed that evil spirits couldn't cross this bridge because they couldn't turn corners. So it's interesting how kind of myth and folklore feed into something that becomes built. So in thinking about the university, Centrebrook, that I was talking about at the beginning, and we know that the government isn't going to fund new third level universities, I thought it might be a perfect opportunity to think about building a third level institution. And I thought what that might be and what it might mean. And I went back to a video that I had seen of the sculptor James McKenna. And it said that a sculptor found a large stone on a hillside. He began carving it. Every day, a postman cycled by. When the piece, a female figure, was finished, the postman stopped, looked, and said, "How did you know she was in there?" And as I looked at the figure of James McKenna sculpting the figure of the lady trapped in the stone, in the background I caught a glimpse that it was actually filmed at Kilkenny Arts Week in 1975. It was the independent artist sculptor's workshop in Roath House, which is just adjacent to the Diageo site. And I thought how this might be a university, a workshop. And I looked at the sculptor Hans Josephson and how his involvement with an architect, Peter Markley, in Jernico produced the gallery at La Conjuncta. An exceptional piece of architecture in a landscape, born of a simple need to house a collection and make it accessible to the community. You pass through a terrain, you stop in a local pub, you pick up a key to this museum, you walk through the olive grove, you pass the museum and double back on yourself and enter into the world of the sculptor. Down the road from Jernico, in Bellinzona, there's another bridge made by the architect Aurelio Galfetti. It's a leisure landscape of swimming pools, a bridge which crosses over it and transforms it into an area of leisure and changing rooms and community facilities. So we've presented two types of bridge, one in Africa, one in Switzerland. And I thought to look at the local community and think what we would see from this bridge, what we would think about and what connections we're trying to make. And I looked at some work we had done with our university students in Carlow at St. Mullins, where we archived our visitor centre and set the objects of their everyday life into a framework at which they could then look back at themselves. Travelled to Glasgow with university students and looked at the development of Trongate 103 in Glasgow. Trongate 103 is a place to see art, make art, enjoy art, and just be creative. Trongate 103 opens the doors to individuals from all backgrounds to develop and enhance their creative abilities and interests through access to a wide range of art forms, including film, photograph, printmaking, video, painting, ceramics, new media, kinetic sculpture, and public art. It will also provide a wide and distinctive range of services to users of the building, supporting and developing the careers of professional artists through access to resources including studios, workshops, networking, training, and exhibition opportunities. This is a place where people can open their own office and are afforded low rent, which seems to me critical in the development of any area that's seeking to promote creativity. So young people can graduate from university and open their own practice with low overheads in a creative environment. This is a small project by a student of ours, a thesis project by Alex Doran, which looked at, again, creating workshops in an environment where people could live and work over a workyard, so that the distinction between work and living is blurred and it becomes a part of the city. So what I thought we need for this site is a superhero, and the superhero I was going to refer to was Dave Eggers, who's an author and a writer. And he developed a writing workshop which has a mask which it wears to hide itself from the community, called the Brooklyn Superhero Supply Store. It's a real shop. that sells everything a superhero should need. And behind it is hidden a writing workshop where children and youths are taught the art of creative writing, and the imagination is set free. Dave Eggers wrote the book What is the What? About a Sudanese refugee, and it's his autobiographical trip to America. The profits of the book allowed the author to return to the Sudan and fund the building of a school for the local community. It seems like an incredible superpower to be able to build a school. Dave Eggers grew up in Chicago and mentions growing up not far from the Swin bicycle plant, which made these everlasting, beautiful bikes. And he talked about what it meant to grow up in a place that made something that had significance in the world, that made the most beautiful bicycles and motorcycles in the world's finest Schwinn bicycles from Chicago. And I thought about Kilkenny, and I thought about the logo from Smithwicks Ale, Ireland's oldest ale, and thought how it has a place in the global world. And I thought that manufacturing might provide a clue to the site. When I was on the site in Kilkenny, one of the people who were showing him around mentioned that he used to work in the sugar beet industry, which is an industry that died out in Ireland for political reasons, as far as I can make out. But we didn't lose the ability to produce the sugar beet. And it's something that's now being looked at to re-emerge in the country with commercial feasibility of a building of 200 million and a 300 million processing plant. And that these figures are justified by the ability of this industry to produce. So I thought we need to think that we're eliminating one industry, and maybe we should consider the fact that that industry provides jobs and it provides a sense of the community as a place of work. I was reading about Bob Marley, and at one stage in 1966, Bob Marley was working in a factory, in a DuPont laboratory, going by the name of Donald. And it reminded me of my own dad, who grew up in Derry and had an opportunity to go to university, which he was provided with by his family, when the alternative was to work for the DuPont chemical factory in his hometown of Derry. And this parallel between Bob Marley singing his way out of this factory existence and my own dad made me think about place and the importance of being able to learn and grow in a place. Because he talked about, in Bob Marley's situation, they talked about the housing projects that he grew up in. And it's often thought that one of the reasons he's singing is to escape these places. So it struck me as a curious thing to think what it would be like to sing to get into a place that you wanted to belong in. This mixture of escape and belonging made me think about the moon and how the astronauts' desire and superhero powers take them to a foreign land. And I don't believe in the conspiracy that we didn't land on the moon, but I found this slide that refers to the Apollo moon landing site. And I realized that it's contained within a playing field, a football playing field. And it struck me that this is no bigger than a film studio. And that the reality is that a very small piece of ground has made us believe in landing on the moon. The fact that we landed on the moon doesn't negate the fact that the piece of ground that makes us believe in it is so small. And it made me think that actually that's what architecture is. Architecture is a thing that, when given a small opportunity on a relatively small piece of land, can make you believe in something as far-fetched as the moon. So I thought about our own superheroes who land and take us to distant planets and make us dream. And I looked at the Kilkenny hurling team. And I looked at the place where they play their field of dreams. And it was somewhat disappointed with this image of the entrance to the turnstiles at Nolan Car Park. So while the site of Diageo has the Braga River running through it, in Portugal, in a town called Braga, they have a football stadium designed by the architect Soto de Moura, carved out of a quarry and creating a theatre where people live out their dreams. I thought about the fact that the stadium could be moved back into the city and become part of the city. And I also thought about the idea of hurling as an industry, where hurls are made. And I thought of Jimmy Ryan, the hurl maker, who graced the covers of the Irish Times in recent weeks. And I thought of distant land in Louisville, where they make the famous Louisville Slugger. And I thought there's not much difference between the global brands, the Louisville Slugger, and its forest of bats in a museum and a factory, from our simple hurl. And how to make a factory that made the hurls. I thought about a place made of timber, a timber yard, a workshop, like the sound box made by Peter Zumthor at the expo. Inside this world of timber, where futures are made. So I look at the similarity between these brands, the Louisville Slugger and the hurl from Kilkenny. And I think of the community gathering these things together. And in parallel to this, I think of the ash crisis that runs through Europe at the moment, where there's a clear and present danger of a sudden and potentially complete devastation of the ash tree. And I thought that in thinking about a university, a workshop, a place to play, a place to learn, a place to work, a place to live, and a place to grow, that we could look at these things. And maybe we should address, in the short term, the crisis of the ash tree and make a forest. And the forest would give us a clue as to what we could do next. It could lay down markers and provide a route for us. All we know at the moment is that we have a piece of land and that a road is going to run through it. What the road runs through is our decision, and we should take our time. Thank you.